Our topic is all about the dark side of the internet. Next topic is selective exposure and political polarization. What is exposure theory? Selective exposure theory is the tendency of a person within mass media to avoid stumbling upon an information that can strengthen or prove their view. It is human nature for us not to want our ideas, opinions, and beliefs when you read contradicting information, but it's best to recognize it. What is the meaning of selective exposure? Is the phenomenon whereby people choose to focus on information in their environment that is congruent with and confirms their current attitudes in order to avoid or reduce cognitive dissonance. For example of selective exposure, you may watch CTV but not CBC television. As a result, you are not exposed to the broadcasting of CBC network because of selective exposure. It is important for marketers to determine where consumers are most likely to be exposed to information. So, political polarization is the divergence of political attitudes away from the center towards ideological extremes. Most discussions of polarization in political science consider polarization in the context of political parties and democratic systems of governments. Next is selective exposure in the Internet age. With the rise of the internet, we tend to really display on it everything that we do. Although there are certain parameters we have to follow to fully utilize its use of it may not be noticeable, but selective exposure takes place in our daily use of the internet, especially on social media with 500,000 users a day in Facebook alone. Users go through thousands to millions of posts each day. This is where can positively use the concept of selective exposure theory. So, selective exposure is a theory within the practice of psychology, often used in media and communication research, that historical refers to individuals' tendency to favor information which reinforces their pre-existing views while avoiding contradictory information. So, like for example, the interaction between anxiety and information utility. In selective exposure in the internet age of social media, endorsements trump partisan source affiliation when selecting news online. There are negative sides in using selective exposure in the internet age, where the negative sides of readers should not avoid information contradicting their current view. Instead, the readers should learn to read information to educate themselves with the need to change their opinions because selectively reading information that only coincides with a reader's beliefs can cause for the reader to miss out of important facts. For the positive side, readers should not readers should learn what to believe or what not to believe when reading information online. This way, readers could stay away from fake news and from spreading it. According to Facebook, estimate no more than 3% of its users are fake accounts and 6% to 10% of its are duplicate accounts. The numbers may seem small in percentage, but when translated into the numbers of accounts, that would be a whopping 270 million. Facebook that are fraudulent, there are circumstances where a user should carefully choose what to see, read, or listen to avoid unwanted happenings. Next is what is political polarization? According to DiMaggio Evans Bryson in 1996, polarization is both a state and a process. Polarization as state refers to the extent to which opinions on an issue are opposed in relation to some theoretical maximum. Polarization as a process refers to the increase This dissertation seeks to improve our understanding of the process by which citizens' selective exposure and in this divergence of political attitudes away from the center towards ideological extremes. Most discussion of polarization in political science consider polarization in the context of political parties and democratic system of government. Like for example, a polarized transverse wave is vibration traveling along a thought string. Say image another example in a musical instruments like a guitar string. Depending on how the string is plucked, the vibration can be in a vertical direction, horizontal direction, or at any angle perpendicular to the string. So, another word for polarization like separation, division, schism, opposition, contrariety, split, divergence, polarity, contradiction, and the last one is difference. So basically in politics, polarization refers to the divided political outlook in ideological extremes. Middle ground usually cannot be found in these cases opinions. There are two types of political polarization, the elite polarization and popular polarization. Elite polarization is the polarization within a party. This happens when the party's views are homogeneous. Political parties with elite polarization have distinct or view and are more unified internally and are habitually seen in a parliamentary system of democratic governments. Popular polarization, or sometimes called mass media polarization, happens when majority of the people in a party have a more heterogeneous view, principle and policies. Members are divided and usually become less moderate in cases of political polarization. So next, the impacts of selective exposure to political polarization. According to Yongwan, in 2013, citizens' selective exposure to ideologically slanted media outlets will lead to polarized attitudes toward political candidates. Conservative Republicans consuming more conservative media outlets were more likely to have polarized attitude toward presidential candidates. An estimate 40% among the human population have access to social media, and that translates to a staggering number of over 3 billion users logging onto social media. That number may not be equally divided into two opposition, but still has division of interest. And like-minded are that ones that usually interact because of selective exposure. This dissertation seeks to improve our understanding of the process by which citizens selective exposure and contribute to at- attitudinal polarization and engage new in political activities. In this dissertation, I test two models that explicate the relationship between selective exposure and political polarization and participation. The knowledge model suggests that the effects of selective exposure on the individuals' attitudinal polarization and political engagements are mediated by knowledge of candidate issue stances. The internet has become a significant aspect when it comes to voting and other political issues. But do the readers really seek for the better option, or are they just selective looking for information that can strengthen their faith in their choices? This how selective exposure affects political polarization. People try to prove their views as blinded as they can be, which creates very contradicting opposition that strongly reinforce political polarization. Next is global digital snapshot. So global snapshot consists of local sets of age process in the distributed system along with the in-transit message on communication channels. The snapshots problem a distributed systems tries to determine current snaps the determine the current snapshot of the global state without stopping the system. So what is the purpose of a snapshot? Snapshots are generally created for data protection, but they can also be used for testing application, software, and data mining. A storage snapshot can be used for disaster recovery or DR when information is lost due to human error. Snapshot is too distributed when system is important for many applications like recovery, debugging a distributed system due to the lack of a global clock, obtaining and obtaining a consistent global snapshot of a distributed system is not trivial. Like for example, transfer money between two accounts located at two different sites. So the summary of Snapshot. This chapter tackles about the dark side of the internet. The two extremes of firstly, the utopian and dystopian views of the internet. The two extremes of ideologies of a view in this case, the future of innovations and technological advancements. Secondly, media acceleration and information, the fast progression or the rise of the internet in terms of exchanging information, and the growing number of uses the users can do with it. Thirdly, internet addiction and isolation, which talks about the bad effects that internet can possibly causes to its users, a problem that may need to be cured long term. Lastly, selective exposure and political polarization that discuss the impact that countries' political issues. This chapter focuses on the internet. And that's all. Thank you for listening.